The midnight sky erupted with light as massive Vraxian Dominion ships materialized above Earth major cities in 2157, their sleek obsidian hulls, reflecting the panicked lights below citizens, stood frozen in streets worldwide, necks craned upward at the impossible geometry of alien architecture, hovering silently against the backdrop of stars. The first 24 hours passed in tense silence as world governments scrambled to establish communication protocols and military forces mobilized to defensive positions without any clear strategy against such advanced technology. Global markets crashed within hours as humanity collectively held its breath waiting for the visitors to reveal their intentions. On the second day, the message came simultaneously across all broadcast channels in perfect English, Mandarin, Arabic, and 100 other Earth languages. Earth contained rare quantum-resonant minerals essential to Vraxian expansion. Humanity had one standard galactic cycle, approximately 90 Earth days, to vacate their homeworld before harvesting would begin. Emergency sessions of the United Nations Security Council stretched into days as politicians, scientists, and military strategists debated options that dwindled with each passing hour. Satellite imagery showed the Vraxian vessels easily outmassing the largest human structures ever built, their propulsion systems defying known physics, their hull material absorbing radar signals rather than reflecting them. High Commander Zexral, a towering figure with iridescent scales and 6 amber eyes, requested a direct meeting with Earth representatives at a hastily constructed neutral site in Geneva. The alien delegation materialized inside the secure facility, bypassing all security measures as if they were merely suggestions. The message delivered in person matched their broadcast. Earth minerals were needed. The inhabitants were not. The Vraxians considered this reasonable notice, and even generous compared to their standard protocols for resource acquisition. Evacuation coordinates to several habitable but unclaimed systems were provided, though the aliens acknowledged humans lacked the technology to reach them. Professor Elena Kovac, head of xenobiology at the International Science Coalition, noted the curious lack of empathy in the Vraxian communication patterns. They spoke of planetary evacuation as casually as humans might discuss a minor traffic detour. Their body language indicated not malice but complete indifference to human concerns. When the United Earth Defense Council delivered their response, a simple but firm no, High Commander Zexral seemed genuinely perplexed. His secondary breathing membranes fluttered in what humans would later learn was amusement. Their civilization possessed interstellar travel, planet-cracking technology, and weapons that could trigger supernova. Earth had barely established permanent lunar colonies and possessed no weapons that could penetrate Vraxian defensive shields. As the alien delegation departed, they left behind a single pulsing buoy in orbit, its holographic display counting down humanity's remaining time on their ancestral home. The message was clear: the Vraxians would return when the counter reached zero. Whether humans remained was irrelevant to them. In the following days, as panic spread across Earth, unusual signal patterns were detected emanating from ancient archaeological sites worldwide. Dear Sophia Chen, lead xenohistorian at the newly formed Existential Threat Division, noticed something curious about the Vraxian language. Their communication contained structural markers identical to those found in 15 other extinct civilizations, documented in Earth's oldest records. And these ancient inscriptions were somehow responding to the Vraxian presence, as if they had been waiting millennia for this precise moment. Dear Sophia Chen hunched over her workstation in the dimly lit underground facility, deep beneath the Greenwich Observatory, her fingers trembling as she traced the alien symbols projected in the holographic display. 3 weeks of sleepless nights had revealed something impossible. The Vraxian language contained structural markers identical to 15 other extinct civilizations. Look at the subharmonic patterning, she whispered to Dear Adebayo Okafor, pushing her thick-rimmed glasses up her nose. It's not just similar, it's deliberately preserved. These patterns, here and here, match exactly with the Nazca inscriptions, and here with the underwater glyphs found off Yonaguni. The ancestral archives sprawl through vast underground chambers beneath the observatory, a closely guarded secret known only to a select few world leaders and scientists within these quantum-locked vaults. lay humanity's most valuable resource, knowledge from civilizations that had fled to Earth as refugees throughout human prehistory, protected by AI guardians with personalities modeled on history's greatest defenders. The archives contained wisdom spanning millions of years and thousands of star systems. Der Okafer nodded, his tall frame casting long shadows across the ancient stone walls as he manipulated the projection, expanding certain symbols. The connections were unmistakable. Each extinct species documented in the archives had received identical evacuation demands before their worlds fell silent. "This is the first time they've done this," he murmured. "It's systematic harvesting." Chen pulled up another display showing biological scan data from the brief Vraxian appearance in Geneva. There was something about their physiology, something familiar. She cross-referenced it with archived biological profiles and gasped when the results appeared. Their genetic structure contains markers from at least 7 distinct species. They did evolve naturally, they were engineered. Working through the night, the two scientists pieced together an incredible narrative. The Vraxians themselves were once victims of planetary harvesting by the ancient Ket Empire. Their world nearly destroyed, their population decimated, but unlike other species, they'd made a different choice. Rather than flee, they had adapted, becoming biological chimeras, incorporating genetic material from their conquerors. Eventually, they overthrew their oppressors only to become the very monsters they had once feared. Most shocking of all, the archives contained detailed analyses of Vraxian biological weaknesses, psychological pressure points, and the blind spots in their seemingly impenetrable technology, all compiled by ancient survivors who had witnessed the earliest Vraxian harvests before finding sanctuary on a primitive Earth. The archives even contained the original genetic sequence of pre-modified Vraxians, revealing how their natural empathy centers had been deliberately suppressed through systematic breeding programs. They erased their own history. Chen realized aloud they modified their genetics to forget their past as victims. Dr. Okafor accessed the deepest vault using his quantum key, retrieving a crystalline data storage device, older than human civilization. They didn't just hide it from others, he said, they hid it from themselves. As dawn broke over London 57 days before the Vraxian deadline, Chen and Okafor presented their findings to General Helena Reyes and the Emergency Committee of the United Earth Defense Council. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. "We can't fight them with conventional weapons," Chen explained, "but we can make them remember who they were." The ancient records contain something the Vraxians don't know exists: their original unmodified genetic code, their true history, and most importantly, the exact broadcast frequencies that can trigger spontaneous genetic memory restoration. General Reyes studied the data, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. For the first time since the Vraxian arrival, a spark of hope appeared in her eyes. "Tell me more about these broadcast frequencies, Dr. Chen." The emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council fell silent as General Helena Reyes stepped forward, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic war table displaying a 3-dimensional model of Earth surrounded by the Vraxian fleet. "Conventional warfare is suicide," she stated, her voice steady, despite the weight of humanity's future resting on her next words. "So we won't fight their ships, we'll fight their minds." "Operation Memento," she announced, activating a new hologram showing complex neural patterns extracted from the ancient Vraxian medical scans. "We leverage humanity's greatest strengths: creativity, psychological insight, and an intimate understanding of trauma." Chen moved to the general's side, bringing up additional displays, showing Vraxian brain structure, highlighting specific regions. The ancient records reveal that the Vraxians systematically erased their atrocities from their historical consciousness through genetic memory modification. None living remember their own dark past, how their ancestors were once victims of the same harvesting tactics by the now extinct Ket Empire, or how they biologically evolved to become the very monsters they once feared. The plan was just audacious, it was unprecedented. Humanity would force an entire species to confront the traumatic history they had buried, triggering a cascade of genetic memory restoration that their leadership had suppressed for millennia. The science was solid but would require precise execution. Admiral Takashi narrowed his eyes skeptically. They have planet-cracking technology and weapons that can trigger supernova. How exactly do we get close enough to broadcast anything? Der Okafor stepped forward, activating another section of the holographic display. In the deepest section of the archives, we found these ship designs, left by the Lyrian refugees who escaped the Third Vraxian harvest. Their vessels operate on frequencies the Vraxians evolved to perceive poorly, essentially creating blind spots in their detection systems. We can build these, Commander Fatima Rodriguez interjected, Director of Global Manufacturing, her mind already calculating resource allocation. With a global effort converting all major production facilities, we could construct enough vessels in 40 days. But where would we hide such a fleet? Asked Chinese Premier Zhao. Everywhere, Rodriguez replied. The ocean, trenches, mountain hollows, abandoned mine systems. Anywhere their scans have already checked and dismissed. The room erupted in discussion as the implications became clear. This wasn't about winning a conventional war. It was about triggering a psychological cascade that might collapse the Vraxian command structure from within. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Maya Kimura led a team that had already begun constructing prototype vessels in an underwater facility near the Mariana Trench. The sleek craft incorporated metamaterials that absorbed rather than reflected scanning frequencies their propulsion systems, leaving minimal thermal signatures. Working around the clock, engineers assembled components as fast as production lines could deliver them. In orbit, the Vraxian countdown buoy continued its relentless ticking, 55 days remaining. Back in London, Darvichen and a team of neurologists worked to perfect the memory trigger signal using ancient Vraxian genetic samples preserved in the archives. The frequency had to be precise enough to activate dormant neural pathways without alerting the Vraxian leadership to the manipulation. On day 37, a breakthrough during a test broadcast using a captured Vraxian communication relay. The signal successfully activated genetic memory in tissue samples. The cellular response was unmistakable. Across the globe, humanity united in a way never before seen. Enemies became allies as every resource was channeled toward Operation Memento. Ancient rivalries forgotten in the face of extinction. Countries shared technology, opened borders, and pooled resources. The construction of the stealth fleet proceeded ahead of schedule, each vessel equipped with specialized electromagnetic pulse generators designed to interact with Vraxian neural pathways. General Rice surveyed the Global Operations Center beneath Mount Cheyenne, tracking the countdown timer displayed prominently on the central screen. 29 days remaining. Humanity's response would need to be perfectly coordinated. No room for error, no second chances. We won't just remind them of who they were, she told her staff. We will make them confront what they've become. The Vraxian Harvest Fleet returned exactly on schedule, their massive ships darkening Earth's skies. Once more on the 90th day since their warning, initial scans from their advanced sensor arrays showed abandoned cities, minimal electronic signatures, power grids operating at barely 10% capacity, a planet seemingly evacuated in fear. High Commander Zexrel stood on the command deck of the flagship Dominion Ascendant, his iridescent scales gleaming under the ambient lighting as sensor data streamed across multiple displays. They fled, he observed to his second in command. Or perhaps they died in their primitive attempts to escape their world. How disappointing. I expected more resistance from a species that refused our initial warning. The second in command of Vraxian, with darker scale patterns and ceremonial rank markings etched into her exoskeleton, nodded. The evacuation coordinates we provided were beyond their technological capabilities. It appears they chose extinction over submission. Give the order to deploy harvesting equipment. Zexrel commanded, a note of disappointment in his flanged voice that humans had surrendered so easily. The mineral extraction could begin immediately once the upper atmosphere was properly conditioned. The fleet dispersed into optimal positions surrounding the planet, deployment hatches opening to reveal massive terraforming machinery. Without warning, every communication system on every Vraxian vessel activated simultaneously. Emergency protocols designed to override system failures activated, yet failed to stop the transmission. The images that flooded their screens weren't threats or pleas. They were memories. Ancient high-definition recordings showed Vraxian ancestors physically different after millennia of evolution, but unmistakably the same species fleeing their burning homeworld as Ket harvesting machines descended from the sky. The broadcast continued relentlessly. Genetic markers scrolled alongside footage precisely highlighting the chromosomal sequences that had been modified in modern Vraxians to suppress these ancestral memories. Mathematical formulas demonstrated the deliberate genetic engineering that had removed empathy centers from the Vraxian brain. Archival footage showed the original peaceful Vraxian civilization before the Ket arrived, before the survivors had transformed themselves. The command deck of the flagship fell into chaos as officers clutched their heads, their pupils dilating as blocked neural pathways spontaneously reactivated. Secondary heart rates spiked across the fleet as the carefully suppressed genetic memories flooded back, bringing with them the terror and helplessness their ancestors had experienced. High Commander Zexrel collapsed to his knees, secondary heart pounding as 5,000 years of carefully excised genetic memory flooded back. Impossible, he whispered, his voice suddenly matching the terrified Vraxian in the ancient footage who was screaming the same word. In the midst of the chaos, Shen monitored the transmission from the hidden command center beneath the Greenwich Observatory. The electromagnetic signatures from the Vraxian ships showed exactly the neural response patterns predicted by the ancient data. The memory blocks were collapsing precisely as theorized. Phase 1 complete, she announced to the gathered Earth leadership. Now for Phase 2. Across the globe, stealth fleet commanders received the synchronized go signal. Lieutenant Maya Kimura felt adrenaline surge through her veins as she prepared to lead her squadron from their underwater hiding place near the Mariana Trench. The moment had arrived. Humanity's hidden armada was about to reveal itself. On the Dominion Ascendant, Zexrel fought through waves of recovered memories, struggling to regain control. Shut down all communication systems, he roared as ancient images of his species' suffering continued to flood every screen. Cut power to the neural interface networks. But it was too late. The carefully maintained barriers between current Vraxian consciousness and their ancestral memories had already begun to collapse. Throughout the fleet, confused officers stared at each other with new understanding and dawning horror as the truth of what they had become, what they had done to countless worlds, crashed through their awareness. Earth's oceans began to boil as 10,000 stealth vessels emerged from the depths, their metamaterial hulls shedding seawater like mercury. Phase 2 had begun. Earth's oceans boiled as 10,000 stealth vessels emerged from the depths, their metamaterial hulls shedding seawater like mercury, concealed in underwater trenches and mountain hollows. Humanity's secret armada had been constructed using designs from the ancient archive ships that operated on frequencies the Vraxians had evolved to perceive poorly. Lieutenant Maya Kimura gripped the control yoke of her stealth craft, adrenaline pulsing through her veins as she led her squadron toward the massive Vraxian support ship designated Target Omega. Her vessel, barely 200 meters long, approached the alien craft that stretched over 8 kilometers from bow to stern. The contrast in size was absurd, like a mosquito approaching an elephant, but size wasn't the point of this confrontation. "This is Memento Squadron. All units report status," she transmitted through the secure quantum-entangled communication network untraceable by conventional detection methods. "Memento 2 through 12 ready," came the responses from her squadron members, each pilot trained extensively in simulator runs based on ancient records of Vraxian ship vulnerabilities. Their vessels carried no conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses designed to interact with Vraxian neural pathways, amplifying their autonomic fear responses. The technology, derived from ancient Ket designs, was essentially a fear amplifier, broadcasting at frequencies that would intensify the memory restoration process already triggered by the initial broadcast. "Deploy memory catalysts on my mark." Kimura ordered, her ship now in optimal position beneath the Vraxian vessel's central propulsion hub. Mark 12 synchronized pulses fired from the human vessels, penetrating the Vraxian shields as if they weren't there. The ancient archives had revealed that Vraxian defensive technology focused on stopping kinetic energy and radiation, but remained completely blind to these specific neural frequencies of vulnerability they had never corrected because they had forgotten it existed. Across the Vraxian fleet, the effects were immediate and devastating. Crew members who had been struggling with partial memory restoration suddenly found themselves overwhelmed by complete ancestral recall. Junior officers saw their superiors not as commanders, but as manipulators who had continued the cycle of horror that had nearly destroyed their own species millennia ago. Simultaneously, specialized communication teams established direct connections with mid-level Vraxian commanders. Bypassing the stunt, High Command der Rokefer led this phase of the operation, transmitting on frequencies that could only be received by specific ranks within the Vraxian command structure. The message streamed on all these targeted frequencies, complete unaltered historical records, showing how the current Vraxian elite had systematically transformed a once peaceful species into galactic harvesters through selective breeding, neural conditioning, and historical revisionism. The transmissions included proof that the Vraxian leadership had known the truth all along, deliberately maintaining the genetic modifications that kept their species ignorant of their origins. On the Dominion, Ascendant Junior Officer Krell Tex found himself unable to follow the direct order to fire upon the suddenly appearing Earth vessels. His claws hovered over the weapons control panel as genetic memories flooded his consciousness, showing his direct ancestor fleeing from the same fate they now prepared to inflict on Earth. The inherited trauma, now unlocked after millennia of suppression, proved stronger than his military conditioning. As Maya Chimera's squadron completed their approach vector, she witnessed something unprecedented through her view screen. Vraxian crew members turning against their officers, their movements erratic with newfound awareness of their manipulated existence. Throughout the fleet, similar chaos spread like wildfire. The Vraxian command structure relied on absolute obedience maintained through both military discipline and genetic conditioning. With the conditioning now unraveling, their carefully maintained hierarchy began to collapse. In the secure command center beneath Greenwich Observatory, Der Chen monitored the neural activity signatures from the Vraxian fleet. The patterns showed exactly what they had hoped for: not just memory restoration, but the beginning of something unexpected in a species engineered to lack empathy. Moral outrage. Contact General Raish, he instructed her team. We need to begin Phase 3 before any loyalist factions can organize resistance. The timeframe has accelerated. Junior Officer Krell Tex ripped the command insignia from his superior's chest, mandibles clicking in rage as ancestral memories continued flooding his consciousness. You knew, he hissed, pinning the struggling commander against the navigation console. You all knew what was done to us, what we became. Across the Vraxian fleet, similar scenes unfolded as the carefully maintained hierarchy collapsed. The genetic memory blocks designed to suppress both their species' traumatic past and natural empathy had catastrophically failed. Junior officers, whose conditioning was less complete than their superiors, staged coordinated mutinies on 7 major vessels. The ancient archives had predicted this vulnerability. Younger Vraxians had fewer layers of neural modification, making them more susceptible to memory restoration. On the flagship, High Commander Zexral fought through the psychic agony to reach the primary weapons console, his 6 eyes narrowed to slits as he frantically input the planetary bombardment sequence. If I can't have this world, no one will, he growled, the words of his ancestor echoing through his mind from 5,000 years ago. Error messages flashed across the screen as the firing mechanisms failed to respond. The planet-cracking weapons remained dormant, despite his increasingly desperate commands. In Earth's secure bunkers, cyber warfare specialists, led by Deborah Manny Washington, worked feverishly implementing the ancient Ket override codes that remained deeply embedded in Vraxian ship architecture. Digital fossils, never fully purged despite millennia of technological advancement. Their ship still remembered, Dr. Washington whispered as the bombardment systems went permanently offline, even if they forced themselves to forget. Throughout the fleet, the rebellion spread rapidly. Lower-ranking crew members who had always been treated as disposable by the command hierarchy now realized the truth that they had been genetically modified to accept their role without question. Maintenance workers, security forces, and even ship engineers joined the uprising. The Dominion's strict case system, designed to maintain order, was instead accelerating its collapse. General Rice monitored the situation from the command center, the holographic display showing real-time status of the Vraxian Fleet Phase 3. She ordered initiate diplomatic contact with the rebel factions. Turkchen activated the specialized communication array designed to reach specific vessels where rebellion had taken strongest hold. "This is Der Sophia Chen of Earth," she transmitted. "We know what was done to you. We know who you once were. We offer you something your leaders have denied you for millennia, the truth." Aboard the support vessel designated Target Omega, Lieutenant Kimura received new orders from Command. Her squadron would escort a diplomatic shuttle carrying Der Okafert to meet with the rebel Vraxian leadership. "It's working," she told her squadron, the relief evident in her voice. "Against all odds, it's actually working." Krell Techs, now in control of 3 major Vraxian vessels, organized the rebel forces. The restoration of their ancestral memories had revealed something else. The Vraxians had once possessed a complex democratic society before the genetic modifications had transformed them into the hierarchical dominion. The ancient civic structures were awakening in their collective consciousness alongside the traumatic memories. In a desperate move, loyal Dominion forces attempted to activate the fleet's self-destruct protocols. The ancient archives had prepared humanity for this contingency. Specialized EMP devices deployed by stealth craft disabled these systems using frequencies that targeted specific Vraxian technologies without affecting critical life support. The battle within the fleet raged for 17-hour ships, firing upon one another when diplomatic solutions failed. When the violence finally subsided, 40% of the Vraxian vessels remained under loyalist control, but they were surrounded by rebel ships and Earth's stealth fleet. High Commander Zexrel found himself isolated, his supporters either dead or having changed sides. Turchen studied the neural activity patterns from the rebel Vraxian ships. They show increased activation in brain regions associated with empathy. She reported something their species hasn't demonstrated in thousands of years. They aren't just remembering their past, they're remembering who they were. "Prepare the International Space Station for diplomatic talks," General Rice ordered. "We need to stabilize this situation before the remaining loyalists can regroup. This isn't just about survival anymore, it's about ending the cycle." The repurposed International Space Station hung against Earth's blue backdrop, its expanded modules now serving as neutral territory for the most consequential diplomatic meeting in human history. The station, originally designed for scientific research, had been hastily modified in the weeks leading up to the Vraxian return, reinforced with materials designed to accommodate the larger alien physiology and equipped with atmospheric processors that could handle their specific breathing requirements. Turchen and General Rice faced the delegation of junior Vraxian officers who had seized control of the fleet, their expressions unreadable as translators worked to keep pace with the rapid, emotionally charged Vraxian speech patterns. The rebel faction, led by Krell Techs, now designated interim fleet commander, showed signs of physical distress, their scales periodically shifting color as ancestral memories continued to surface and integrate with their current consciousness. "We offer terms," Reyes stated, simply activating a holographic display showing 27 planetary systems. "These worlds, all harvested by your dominion in the past millennium, deserve justice." The proposal was elegant in its simplicity. Earth would share the complete historical archives with all Vraxian worlds, allowing their entire species to reclaim their unaltered history. In exchange, humanity would refrain from broadcasting these records to other galactic powers who would certainly demand the Dominion dissolution. Junior Officer Krell Tex stared at the rotating planets, each representing billions of lives, ended how he finally asked, voice barely audible, "How did you possess what we ourselves had lost?" Turchen smiled sadly, sliding forward an ancient data crystal. "Because those who survived came here seeking refuge on a primitive world where they believed their memories would remain safe until needed. They trusted humanity to remember what the universe had forgotten." The negotiations stretched over 3 Earth days as the Vraxian rebels struggled to process both their recovered memories and the implications of their species' actions across millennia. The rebel faction had secured 60% of the fleet, but loyalist forces, led by High Commander Zexrel, remained entrenched on the remaining ships, refusing all communication attempts. On the third day, alarms blared throughout the space station as sensors detected weapons charging on the Loyalist vessels. Despite being outnumbered, Zexral had ordered a final desperate attack targeting both the rebel ships and Earth itself. "Activate Contingency Protocol 7," General Reyes ordered calmly, seemingly unperturbed by the imminent attack. Throughout Earth's atmosphere, previously hidden defense platforms activated their power signatures, untraceable. Until this moment, the ancient archives had contained more than just historical records and ship designs. They had included defensive technology from dozens of civilizations who had fought the Vraxians and the Kett before them. Concentrated energy beams lanced upward from these platforms, not targeting the Vraxian ships directly, but creating a planetary energy shield that encased Earth in a shimmering protective barrier. The Loyalist weapons fire dissipated harmlessly against this defense, a technology thousands of years more advanced than anything the Vraxians had encountered. "We could have destroyed your entire fleet at any time," Shen explained to the shocked rebel delegation. "The archives contained weapons that could have reduced your ships to atoms, but that would have continued the cycle of destruction. We chose a different path." Taking advantage of the Loyalists' failed attack, the rebel forces surrounded the remaining ships, cutting off all escape routes. Their superior numbers and strategic positioning left the Loyalists with no viable options. Eventually, even Zexral was forced to surrender, brought to the space station in restraints, his once imposing presence diminished by defeat. The diplomatic agreement that followed would reshape galactic politics for centuries. Earth would share the complete historical archives with the Vraxian people. All memory suppression technology would be dismantled. The Vraxian Reformation Council would replace the Dominion government, with Krell Tech serving as interim leader until democratic systems could be reestablished. Perhaps most importantly, a truth and reconciliation process would begin for all worlds affected by Vraxian expansion. Restoration and reparations would be provided where possible for harvested worlds, with Earth serving as neutral mediator. As the final documents were signed, Krell Tex approached Dr. Chen privately. He asked, "Why show mercy when you could have destroyed us?" Chen placed a hand gently on the cool metal table. "Because memory is stronger than any weapon your world once burned as they tried to take it from your ancestors. We knew that making you remember that pain would ensure you never inflicted it again." 1 Earth year later, Chen stood beneath the towering crystalline spires of the Remembrance Monument on the Vraxian homeworld Nexura, its translucent surfaces projecting the faces of countless beings from harvested civilizations. The monument extended for kilometers across the capital city's central district, its foundations reaching deep into the bedrock of a planet that had nearly suffered the same fate millennia ago. The atmosphere on Nexura felt heavier than Earth, denser with trace elements that gave the sky a perpetual amber hue. Chen had adjusted to it during her 3-month diplomatic mission, but still found herself breathing more deliberately as she walked through the crowded memorial plaza. Vraxians of all castes moved around her, their scale patterns more varied and colorful than she had ever seen on the military vessels. The genetic diversity suppressed for thousands of years was gradually re-emerging as the artificial constraints on their evolution were dismantled. The Vraxian Reformation Council, led by former junior officer Krell Tex, had dismantled the old regime and begun the painful process of societal transformation. The transition had not been without violence. Loyalist insurgencies had flared up on 7 Vraxian colony worlds, resulting in thousands of deaths before being contained, but the momentum toward restoration proved unstoppable as more Vraxians reclaimed their ancestral memories. Nearby human historians worked alongside Vraxian truth seekers, cataloging and preserving the unaltered records of all civilizations affected by the Dominion's expansion. The effort to document the full scope of the harvesting campaign had revealed an even greater toll than initially estimated: 34 species completely extinguished, 17 reduced to remnant populations, and 8, like the original Vraxians, genetically modified beyond recognition. A young Vraxian approached Dr. Chen, her scales still bearing the iridescent sheen of adolescence. "The elders say you could have destroyed us," she said, multifaceted eyes reflecting the monument's lights. "Why choose this path instead?" Chen knelt to meet the child's gaze. Because memory is stronger than any weapon, she explained, placing a hand gently on the cool ground your world once burned, as they tried to take it from your ancestors. We knew that making you remember that pain would ensure you never inflicted it again. The knowledge exchange between Earth and the reformed Vraxian society had accelerated human technological development. By centuries, carefully managed implementation of selected Vraxian technologies had allowed humanity to establish their first extrasolar colonies while avoiding the cultural disruption that often accompanied such rapid advancement. More significant than technology was the diplomatic position Earth now occupied in galactic affairs as the keepers of the archives and mediators of the Vraxian reconciliation process. Humans had become respected as neutral arbiters in disputes between older, more established species. The decision to use memory rather than weapons had earned humanity a reputation for wisdom rare among emerging civilizations. As ceremonial bells rang out across the city, officially marking the first Galactic Remembrance Day, Chen watched Vraxian families gathering in solemn reflection. Many wore the silver memory bands that signified they had undergone the voluntary genetic restoration procedure, reconnecting them with their species' unaltered consciousness. The growing movement toward restoration gave hope that the reformed society would not backslide into its former patterns. In a secure chamber beneath the monument, Chen met with the Vraxian Council for the final transfer of archival materials. Earth had kept its promise, providing complete, unaltered records that spanned millions of years and thousands of star systems. The knowledge would be housed in a distributed network accessible to all Vraxian citizens, ensuring no future leadership could again suppress their history. Krilltex, now bearing the title of Restoration Guardian, joined Chen on the observation platform overlooking the gathered crowds below. When I first remembered I wanted vengeance, he admitted, my first instinct was to turn our weapons on our own command ships, but you showed us another way. Chen nodded, watching as the monument's central spire illuminated, projecting the ancient Vraxian symbol for remembrance into the amber sky. The true victory was defeating your ships. It was breaking the cycle your people will rebuild. And next time some species comes with harvesting ships or planet-cracking weapons, you'll be standing with us, reminding them of who they once were. Humanity had found its place among the stars not through superior firepower, but by becoming the keepers of memory for 100 worlds, guardians against the terminal disease of forgetting. The stars overhead seemed brighter somehow, as if the universe itself approved of this new path forward.